Welcome to Any Lab Test Now Boca Raton, the home to the fastest, most affordable clinical testing in South Florida.
Hi, I'm Radia Glees. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist. Today we're going to talk about Category 10 and 11, all about the thyroid. Category 10 is about low thyroid function, or what we call hypothyroid. And the symptoms are tired, sluggish, cold hands and feet, feel cold all over, require excessive amounts of sleep to function properly, increase in weight gain, even if you're on a low-calorie diet, or you gain weight easily, difficult, infrequent bowel movements, constipation, depression, lack of motivation, morning headaches that wear off as the day progresses. The outer third of your eyebrow thins, thinning of hair on scalp, face, or genitals, or excessive hair loss in general, dryness of skin and or scalp, mental sluggishness, abnormal menstrual cycles, and brittle fingernails. Less common symptoms are impaired memory, impaired cognitive function. We call it brain fog or inattentiveness. Low heart rate. This is when the heart is beating less than 60 beats per minute. Reactive or postprandial, which means after eating, hypoglycemia. Sluggish reflexes. Anemia caused by impaired hemoglobin synthesis, impaired intestinal iron and folate absorption, or a B12 deficiency. Difficulty swallowing. Shortness of breath with a shallow and slow respiratory pattern. Irritability and mood instability. Yellowing of skin due to impaired conversion of beta-carotene to vitamin A. Impaired kidney function. Elevated serum cholesterol. Decreased libido due to impairment of testosterone synthesis. Decreased sense of taste and smell. Puffy face, hands, and feet. And something we call gynecomastia, which is basically man titties. And finally, vitiglio, which is white spots on the skin. The thyroid is in charge of two main functions. First, it controls the rate of metabolism in the body. In other words, your body's ability to break down food and convert it to energy. Food essentially fuels our body, and our bodies burn that fuel at different rates. This is why you often hear about some people having fast metabolisms and others having slow metabolisms. And second, the parathyroid helps regulate calcium. These are levels in the bone with the hormone called calcitonin. That's the hormone that stimulates bone to take up calcium out of the blood and store it. But there's more. Thyroid hormones act to increase the basal metabolic rate, which is the amount of energy expended while at rest. They affect protein synthesis, they help regulate long bone growth, and it's synergistic with growth hormones. The maturation of neurons, the increase of the body's sensitivity to what we call catecholamines. Catecholamines are hormones and neurotransmitters such as adrenaline or epinephrine. For example, thyroid hormones increases the number of receptors available for epinephrine or adrenaline at target cells. Remember, receptors are like little locks on the cell, and hormones are the keys that unlock it and let, in this case, adrenaline in to function, thereby increasing epinephrine or adrenaline's effect at the cell. Without the thyroid hormone, epinephrine would only have a weak effect. The thyroid hormones are essential to proper development and differentiation of all cells of the human body. These hormones also regulate protein, fat, carbohydrate metabolism. They stimulate vitamin metabolism. So let's talk a little more about the function. The function of the thyroid gland is to take iodine found in many foods, especially seafood, and convert it to thyroid hormones, such as what we refer to as T4 and T3. Oh, and FYI, thyroid cells are the only cells in the body which can absorb iodine. Now, some of you may have heard of a goiter. That's evident when the area of the neck, which is where the thyroid is located, enlarges. And a goiter is literally the thyroid expanding to capture as much iodine as possible. Before the turn of last century, we had a region in this country that we referred to as the goiter belt. The goiter belt was this middle part of the country that was not near the coast, where foods like fish and seaweed and kelp and other foods which are loaded with iodine. We somewhat solved the goiter belt population problem by iodizing salt. That's why they did that. And now, there's other problems related to that, but I'm not going to go into that with this story right now. I want to stick to thyroid. All right, let's talk a little bit about the way the thyroid works. The thyroid gland is under the control of the pituitary and the hypothalamus up in the brain. I like to call them air traffic control. When the levels of thyroid hormone T3 and T4 drops too low, the boys upstairs, the pituitary, produces what we call TSH, which stands for thyroid stimulating hormone, which of course stimulates the thyroid glands to produce more hormones. Okay, so TSH will trigger the thyroid to manufacture and secrete T3 and T4, thereby raising their blood levels. When the pituitary senses this raise, it'll then respond by decreasing its TSH production. So imagine the thyroid as a furnace and the pituitary gland as a thermostat. So when your doctor does a standard blood test, he or she may take a TSH to check thyroid status. But that's not the whole picture. Many people may have a normal TSH, but still have all these thyroid-related symptoms, right? But your doctor says your thyroid is fine. Now here's a real kicker. Supposing your doctor does a TSH and a T3, T4, and they still are all in normal range, yet you're still having symptoms. Well, again, that's not the whole picture by any means. First of all, the T3, T4 are what we call bound thyroid hormones, which means these hormones are bound and transported. They're carried around in the blood by a protein called TBG, which is thyroid binding globulin. But it's only the free T3, not the bound, but the free hormones, that is really the active hormone. So if you only look at the bound hormones and they're in range, but not look at the active free hormones, then that's not a good picture and you're not seeing the whole reason why you may be having symptoms. But we may be still missing a picture. Supposing your TSH and your T3, T4s and your free T3, T4s are all in range, but you're still having symptoms. Well, it may not be the thyroid, but your immune system that's causing the problem. This is a condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This is an autoimmune condition where your own immune system rejects your own thyroid hormones at the binding site. Now you have to take a TPO, or thyroid antibody test, and you'd be amazed at how many people have this condition and go undiagnosed. So now what do? In many cases, the doctor will treat Hashimoto's by giving you synthetic thyroid hormones to try and override the system. But the problem is, it's not the thyroid, it's the immune system. And if you don't treat the immune system, you'll do permanent damage to a perfectly good thyroid and never really solve the problem. The symptoms of low thyroid functions may originate from numerous alterations in metabolism, such as decreased thyroid and pituitary hormone synthesis. In other words, a decrease in making of the hormones anywhere along the process. Altered hypothalamus pituitary feedback coordination. In other words, air traffic control's messaging system gets screwed up. Altered thyroid hormone transport. In other words, protein binding transport gets messed up. Altered peripheral hormone metabolism. This is where T4 turns into T3 in the peripheral tissue, which is where it actually happens. So if that gets messed up, that may cause this as well. Hormone detoxification. Remember, hormones are converted in the liver. So if the liver is toxic, it's overburdened and won't convert properly. Thyroid receptor site resistance. Remember, the receptor site is like a lock and the hormone is a key. So if other keys are competing, such as estrogen, it won't work. Hormones are complicated. And there's even more to this story, but I figure I've probably exhausted you by now, so let's move on. Here are some dietary guidelines for hypothyroid. Eat the suggested guidelines of the adrenal protocol. Do not skip meals. Eat a high-quality protein-based breakfast. Eat every 2 or 3 hours. Don't wait until you're hungry. Snack with low glycemic foods such as nuts, seeds, hard-boiled eggs. Avoid all fruit juices and carrot juices. Never consume a high glycemic food without a protein. Avoid all stimulants, such as simple sugars, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol. Allergic foods, like allergenic foods, partially hydrogenated fats, artificial sweeteners, overtraining, inadequate sleep. And here's a key. Avoid raw cruciferous vegetables. These are things like raw broccoli, raw cauliflower, raw cabbage, and soy. Notice I said raw cruciferous vegetables. When you cook them, they no longer affect your thyroid the same way. Now I want to touch on category 11. This is hyperthyroid or overactive thyroid symptoms. These symptoms are heart palpitations, inward trembling, increased pulse, even at rest, nervousness and emotional outbreaks, insomnia, night sweats, difficulty gaining weight. There are different degrees of overactive thyroid function. Some may be managed functionally, and some may need the intervention of medication and hormones for a brief period of time to manage.
At Any Lab Test Now Boca Raton, we offer a variety of clinical tests, from allergy and arthritis to cancer and cholesterol to diabetes and more. All at 70% off typical lab prices. Our professional and well-trained staff is there to ensure the best test experience possible. No matter what type of test you require, we'll see you within 15 minutes and have you on your way soon after. We'll have your results in less than 48 hours. Come to Any Lab Test Now Boca Raton for all your clinical testing needs. Visit labbocaraton.com for more information.